To note, Grey House is currently in previews, but if it's anything as it is now as it is when it comes to opening night, while it's strange, startling, but never horrifying, Grey House may be one of the most interesting things we've ever seen on Broadway, especially for a show that's not a musical. To summarize the play, it's set in 1977, so no cell phones, no internet, and Max and Henry just got into a car accident. It's Max's fault because she was driving, and also because the reason they were driving cross country was to go to Max's dad's house in order to clean it out. Now, unfortunately for them, when they crash, it's at least 15 plus miles away from civilization, so the only thing that they can find for shelter is this old gray house somewhere up in the mountains. And unfortunately for Max, Henry's ankle is broken, so between that, the car being broken down, because of the crash, and then a blizzard coming in, they're stuck in this cabin with these slew of eccentric characters. Now, there is an adult, her name is Raleigh, but it becomes increasingly clear as the play goes on that Raleigh is just a caretaker who cleans and cooks for the children who are truly running things. The head of them is Marlowe, who she likes to push boundaries, and she gets a kick out of it. Following her, there is Bernie, who is deaf. There's A1656, who is a very sweet girl, but like Bernie, she gets into mischief if Marlowe allows her to participate. And then there's Squirrel, who is this girl who, at times she comes off a bit feral, but she's able to communicate. She's able to cook, clean, and all that type of stuff, so she's definitely a wild card in a way that raises an eyebrow and definitely leads to a few creepy moments. Lastly, there is a boy whose name changes as Marlowe wills it, but I think the one that she settled on for now is Mr. Man, but again, it changes based off of how she feels. Like, for example, she calls Henry Hank instead of his actual name, and when she learns Max's actual first name is Ashley, she so badly wants to call her Ashley, but Max doesn't allow it, so there's a little bit of a tug and pull there. But one of the reasons why Marlowe likes to push boundaries is because she, and even the house, which is sort of a character, but kind of not a character, they really like the truth. Marlowe even has a game, which leads into some occult moments, called Show and Hell, where if you tell the truth, you can get out of the middle of the circle, but if you tell a lie, it can hurt somebody, and that somebody's usually Raleigh. But the point of this all is, for a couple of days, Max and Henry have to put up with this, and while Max is able to kind of get acclimated, things keep happening to Henry that push the idea that he may not survive these few days as the blizzard rages on. So in terms of content advisory, dialogue-wise, there's cursing throughout, mostly used for comic effect, but also there should be noted that there are stories about children being killed or molested. In terms of violence, there is some violence regarding animals in terms of pulling out entrails, and there's a light gore dealing with Henry's wound. In terms of sexual content, it's implied that Henry's naked, and you can see him and Max during the night potentially get it on, but when Tatiana Maslany is trying to, get with her man, she's fully clothed, so it's not a major thing. As for miscellaneous stuff to mention, there is smoking, there's drinking, there is a scene of vomiting, and I want to say that's it. Now, in terms of the review, highlight, no doubt about it, is Marlowe. Marlowe, every character sort of has their niche, and I would say when it comes to Marlowe, she's able to take on a little bit of everything everybody does, and she does it well. She can be that sweet kid that Bernie and A1656 are, but at the same time, she can come off very creepy and dangerous like we see when it comes to Squirrel. But on her own, she also brings in this sort of curiosity that feels innocent, sort of like the boy, and when you put that all together, it just makes a character who keeps your attention throughout. And that's saying something, because this is an hour and 40-minute play, and while it does, yes, have a handful of jump scares and scary moments, it's really Marlowe's performance that keeps it going and keeps the pace up, keeps the energy, And I would dare say, even though, of course, they're advertising Tatiana Maslany, and also Paul Sparks, and most of all, Laurie Metcalf, it's really Sophia Ann Caruso who holds this down. And if this does get any type of nominations or accolades, it's pretty much because of her performance keeping you engaged. Now, tapping back into that horror element, it should be noted, Grey House is not like most American horror productions. Yes, there are a handful of jump scares as we mentioned, though it's really only 2. And there's imagery that can creep you out because it likes to turn off the lights and everything, and then there's a few creepy moments where people pop up, but that's not really what it wants to be when it comes to getting you kind of scared or even shocked in some ways. It's very much about tone and setting a sense of things aren't right here. It does that for the young girls who, of course, like any horror movie, they have a few song and dance numbers. There's this sense that you are in some mountainous area and these are people who've been isolated from the rest of the world, and that leads to them thinking a few things are normal when for most of us it isn't. And it just keeps going on and on in terms of making you feel uncomfortable rather than pushing imagery or random things to freak you out. I mean, even in regards to the story, there's some occult elements in there. There's various hints that something nefarious may have happened to the girls or Raleigh, or even the boy. And that's what keeps you engaged. That's what makes you want to lean forward as if that's really going to help you see or really understand things better. And heck, even when it comes to the set, the creaking doors, the place characters either appear or disappear, and even the house, as I think I said when it came to the highlights for Marlowe, or maybe something in the summary, the house itself is also kind of a character, as you can hear it breathe and sigh, and if somebody lies, how it shakes almost in anger. And all of this is done without having grandeur moments, but it still always keeps you in a state of potentially being fearful, especially as, even though sometimes it messes with the pace, there are moments where things are kind of quiet or silent. And even where I was sitting up in the balcony, there was always this need or feeling that maybe I should turn around and make sure no one's going to pop up from behind me just to freak me out a little bit, because that's how this play is, where you may think you're safe because you're not close to the stage, but at times it makes you wonder, am I really? So in terms of the on the fence topic, it's mainly because despite how long the play is, even though an hour and 40 minutes is pretty average, I have to admit some things about this play don't feel like it's explained properly, or else you'll want clarification because between maybe somebody sitting next to you snoring or just the lack of enunciation or even the sound system not being loud enough, you may miss something. And the reason why that's such an issue is because I think my ticket was like over $100, and I'm not going to go see a play twice just to make sure I know what the hell they said. This isn't like a movie which is $20 and more than likely I get some type of access to some replay so I can know this is what happened to this person, that person, etc. That's not here. That's not an option. And it makes it very frustrating because part of the creepiness of the film, part of the creepiness of the play comes from learning these kids' stories and what happened. Now, first off, when it comes to the Grey House, we don't get details about why this house is so special or anything like that. We also don't learn much about this one character called the Ancient, who just appears in Henry's dreams, or rather nightmares, and kind of just pops up and sits. That character is just there. And perhaps what really makes this an on-the-fence topic for me is that when it comes to the pacing, yes, Marlowe keeps things going, but then we have these nightmares with Henry that kind of slow things down. We have these stories that originally seem kind of nonsensical, but then as we hit to the ending, we find out, oh, these stories are supposed to connect to the characters. And while when it comes to two characters like Bernie and A1656, you're able to tell this is about this character, that's about that character, in terms of everyone else, it's a little bit harder to connect the dots, especially if you don't hear the one time everything's revealed, which is all done within a span of maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And yes, we all told their stories beforehand, but at that time, you're thinking that this is just to set the vibe, to keep things creepy because it's supposed to be a horror play. And I guess the core of this whole on the fence thing is just how unfortunate it is that if you miss something, you're pretty much shit out of luck. Unless you're the type who's really gonna talk to your neighbor and ask, did you catch that? Which I feel like if you're paying at minimum, from what I'm seeing, $79, you shouldn't have to do that. Overall, when it comes to Great House, you have to applaud any play for taking chances, especially in a very expensive Broadway district, for having something that is a horror without it being a musical like Beetlejuice or something like that. That's a risk. And for the most part, it is a risk that pays off because Great House, while certainly not perfect, any flaw you can come up with either deals with either the patrons who share the theater with you or things that are easily fixable issues rather than something that deals with what either the playwright, director, or even actors can't deliver.